All right, so let's take a look at this year's Clash by looking at last year's Clash. Okay, let's be aware that there were several things involved going into the race last year that we do need to actually pay attention to and not just discount and not just throw away. Let's pay attention that this was the first time that we saw these cars in a competition setting. That's not saying they hadn't gone fast before at Charlotte and the Roval, Charlotte and the Oval during the testing and everything like that at other tracks, but this is the first time we saw them actually run hard in a competition setting. So we came in not understanding how, fragile these cars would truly be. We had a ton of DNFs in this short event. We had a ton of damage in this short event when, for example, Kyle Larson just doors Justin Haley towards the inside wall. We had a lot of previews for really kind of how bad these cars would run at the short tracks, because this race just turned into run the bottom. Don't leave room on your inside entering these corners. You're going to have to shove people out of the way. Okay, and so when we look back at the optimal, when we look back at how this race went through, let's just be aware that we had a lot of things going on. Why do I like living in a bunch of what-if situations or what-if scenarios? Well, because I think we're going to have to look at last year's race in very much a what-if scenario to have an idea of what happens in this year's race. Now, what I mean by that is let's go ahead and take a quick look. And so I'm trying to think of different ways to show stuff this year. At least for me, whenever I look back at races, I nearly always visualize it by what the grid looked like and how everybody did. As you can see, I have highlighted the optimal lineup in yellow. I've highlighted certain drivers who had mechanical issues, who DNF'd, who just weren't able to stay up there and lead laps. You can see them in the DFS or in the DNF highlighted zone. We also have where they finished, positions gained and lost. If you want to view the optimal lineup, if you want to view fast laps and laps led, if you want to view just a ton of stuff, let me show you real fast. Okay, look, I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm not trying to push you away from anybody. I'm just here to explain our pricing, why I think you should support us, and why I think that we provide the best DFS coverage. I understand you're hearing that from everybody. You're seeing testimonials from different customers and things like that. But just for example, this is what you're going to see if you support Pearce and support I. But let's go back and look at the laps from last year. So not only do we have optimal, here, for example, we have seasons going all the way back to 2016, but let's just use for an example. We want to look back at the lap by lap data of last year's Clash race or any race, which you can do this for all the other years too. You're going to go to 2022, you're going to go to Cup Seasonal. Who else has all of this stuff? Okay, tons and tons of sheets, tons and tons of things. Hey, let's just take a gander and look at the lap-by-lap data for the Clash. Oh, well, here it is. Okay, we can see very easily that we're not having a ton of movement between these drivers and between the positions. We kind of see everybody fall in line. Now, yes, the lead is swapped off and on right off the bat by Kyle Busch and Tyler Reddick because they're running side by side, but when the race started getting going, it turned to a one-groove racetrack. Once the leader clears the guy he's fighting on his outside, he's pretty much gone. The only way you're going to get the lead in this event is to be starting on the inside lane, okay? So we can very easily and just quickly see how this race kind of pans out and why we have just huge guys who are showing speed, and granted, this is a 23-car field, so if you're running consistent times in the top 8, top 1, top 3, with the indication of Briscoe, Tyler Reddick, and Justin Haley, you run a pretty good car. You're pretty fast, and you're also not being passed a lot. There's no passing going on, okay? For the most part, and we'll see that as we continue to go through this race, track position was huge. Track position was absolutely vital. Now, I understand, yes, practice data did come into play. We saw some people show speed in practice that would end up showing speed in the race. I mean, Chase Elliott, even Tony Stewart said that he pretty much had the best car in the practices in the heats from what he saw in terms of what the car would provide. But anyway, continuing to go on, when we look through this, you can see that we're not having a ton of passing, okay? Kyle Busch, Joey Logano, they run the entire race inside the top 5, okay? Now, why is that? Why am I bringing this up? Pearce had a fantastic car despite the fact he was running Rick Ware equipment. Bubba Wallace was consistent the entire day until he was spun late in this race. Okay, so for the most part, we're not seeing anybody absolutely fall out of the position that they're running in outside of a situation where they get spun out or anything like that. Okay, so also, if you want to dive into more of this stuff for other races, feel free to support me, support Pearce at Patreon. BrandonCruzDFS, thank you very much. When we look at this race here, okay, so why did Kyle Busch become optimal? Why did Joey Logano become optimal? This isn't a situation of, well, we really should have seen, Joseph Logano, the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series champion. We really should have seen him from practice. No, it's not a situation like that. Look, Tyler Reddick had the best car. Okay, Tyler Reddick, RCR in general, showed for this track, understanding what they want to do. We saw Austin Dillon start 10th. He ends up finishing 3rd. Okay, we have Tyler Reddick, who right off the gate is very quick in this car, in this package, right off the bat. Okay, we see Tyler Reddick go out there, take the lead away from Kyle Busch, despite the fact he's on his outside. So Tyler Reddick is able to get around Kyle Busch because he just has a better car head-to-head. When we look at this year's starting grid, pole position going to be the guy who wins heat number 1. Outside pole is going to be the guy who wins heat number 2, so on and so forth. So everybody up here is going to be fast. It'll just depend on what line they're at, which is another reason why I did this. We need to focus primarily on, and in my opinion, the positions, okay? The grid positions. It's not certain drivers, okay? All the cars starting in the top 4 in this race are going to be fast cars, okay? It's just how it is, Look, the heats are going to be set by just a random hot lap, and then the grid is set by how people finish in the heat. So everybody in the top 4 are going to have cars that are going to run well. What points certain people to leading laps and not leading laps, being optimal, not being optimal? Well, let me continue. Look, Tyler Reddick had the best car, no doubt about it. If you want to argue differently, go right ahead. I think you're just screaming at the wall, just screaming at a bunch of bricks. Nothing's going to change from that. Tyler Reddick had the best car. Now, in this race, Reddick had a nice lead. He was catching Bubba Wallace at the end of lap 16. He is catching the back half of the field. Let me explain that to you. Look, we're on lap 16, ladies and gentlemen, which is right here, okay? And he is catching Bubba Wallace, who is running dead last because he's Bubba Wallace. He just can't drive. JK. Anyway, he's catching the tail end of the lead lap on lap 16. I mean, Reddick is gone. There's nobody in contention here. And then I got to control F real fast. Reddick ends up breaking a transaxle, and we see Tyler Reddick go from just the clear favorite to just out of contention. Didn't get past. Nobody caught up to him. Nobody spun him out. Nobody wrecked him. He didn't get in the wall. He just broke a rear end. Okay. Which is something that we saw a lot earlier in the year. So, yet again, kind of going back to what-if situations. Why am I wanting to look at things in a what-if situation? Well, what if Tyler Reddick doesn't blow a transaxle? There's a good chance that Reddick doesn't give up the lead until we have another restart and so on and so forth. Okay, so the fact that Tyler Reddick came out of the gate and led a third of the race with 51 laps, that is absolutely huge. Okay, so when we're looking at this race in 2 weeks, when we're looking at the people in this race in 2 weeks, we need to really pay attention to who has the better of the two cars, in my opinion, from the pole sitters. Okay? Because look, once Tyler Reddick, had an issue, who was there to capitalize? Who was the guy running second the entire time when Reddick blows an engine? Well, it is then Kyle Busch. Okay, Kyle Busch leads from when Tyler Reddick blows or, breaks a transaxle from lap 54 all the way to, I believe there is a yellow that removes him from that. So he leads wall to wall. Actually, he survives 2 restarts, and nobody could really get around him, with Logano being stuck on his outside but not really able to move him. So this is 2 distinct situations with true evidence showing that you can't pass the leader, dude. It's useless. There's no point in trying to really try and get different and think about who's gonna be a lap leader. So it's gonna be primarily one of the 2 guys up in the front. And I would argue that it's most likely going to be the pole sitter. I understand Reddick took the lead from Kyle Busch in this race. But when you look at when they were just battling side by side, you could see that Kyle Busch's car just wasn't able to hold off Reddick at that time. Once Reddick kind of started pulling around, that's when Kyle Busch got more comfortable with the car. I think it was just a situation that, look, it was the first few laps under speed at this short track with these guys running side by side, dooring each other a little bit. Reddick just ends up getting being able to pull away from Kyle Busch early. But when we look specifically at blocking the names out, the guy starting first, okay? So we have I know Reddick passes Kyle Busch, but we're side by side here. But the guy who is in first place is going to hold the lead, So when we get to Kyle Busch here, who starts first, who understands what he did wrong here earlier in the race, he's able to just hold on to the first place position, okay? And so when we look at this race here, there's a real chance that Reddick would just run away with the race if he didn't have any issues. There's a real chance that since drivers are more aware of what this car is going to do, since they've been to Martinsville several times, since they are just more familiar with this car, that the pole sitter is most likely going to understand, and that team is going to understand what they need to do to set that car up so nobody can pass them on these restarts. So when we're looking towards this, not this week, 2 weeks on when we look at February 3rd's clash, I think the pole sitter is and should be one of the most important, one of the highest owned, and probably the guy that you should focus on. I understand that Kyle Busch ends up being optimal from this race, but Reddick by far had the best car. Kyle Busch is optimal because he just leads so many laps. And I didn't include the fast laps here because, look, fast laps are most likely going to go to whoever is in the lead because they're not having to deal with battling everybody, but I didn't want to necessarily focus on that. I'm focusing primarily on how to approach this race in terms of who's going to walk away with the lead. That's just how I think it's going to be. When we look at Justin Haley, a guy who didn't necessarily, push anybody out of the way for the lead, but he starts third, and he stays in third. Look at this. The whole first run, you basically run where you started. There's no passing whatsoever. Okay? Justin Haley, fast car, gets moved back a little bit, working his way through the field, gets side by side, and then, Kyle Larson, as I said, just left rears him into the inside wall. Okay? And so the fact that we have 2 DNFs of people who started, actually, we have 3 DNFs from inside the top 6 is pretty nuts. Just Haley, a true DNF, not a mechanical issue. He just got wrecked out. Chase Briscoe then breaks. He has a mechanical issue as well. Reddick has a mechanical issue. So why was Kyle Busch, why was Joey Logano optimal? Well, because it defaulted them being optimal because everybody else who was running in those positions in front of them or beside them just got taken out of the event, Reddick and his 51 fast laps and his fast lap points just get removed, okay? And so it's just Kyle Busch who ran first or second the whole day, and then Joey Logano who was basically just able to capitalize on Reddick not being up in the top 3, just Haley not being in the top 3, and able to get around Kyle Busch late in this race. That gives him the win. As you can just see, he's battling side by side with second place again. As he, third, second, he's going back and forth. He finally gets around him, and then he's able to get around Kyle Busch with the last few laps remaining. Okay, now that we kind of look at that, let's pay attention here, okay? Now, Daniel Suarez, am I surprised that he lost 9 positions in this race? No, not really. We understand that Suarez is just not going to, hold his ground when he's starting 5th in a situation like this with the field behind him, okay? William Byron, Hendrick, the guys who understood how to set the car up, or at least not understood, but guys who are going to run where they should run because you can't pass anybody. William Byron, when we look at his laps, we just see him run in the same position the entire time. Okay, let me make sure I don't click anything. I'm not trying to. What's the story of William Byron? Just running in the same position every day. Oh, wait. How did William Byron go from 8th? Kind of gets to 7th here. How did he get to 5th, Brandon? What happened here? Oh, yeah. Denny Hamlin has a mechanical issue. Although he's not racing around him, so that's not a position he gains. But, oh, wait a minute. Chase Briscoe, his race is over. Tyler Reddick, mechanical issue. His race is over. So the 2 guys in front of him, that DNF just moves him up 2 positions. But in terms of positions actually gained where he's running, we're not making huge changes, okay? Kyle Larson, gains 3 positions, goes from 8th to 5th, not gaining huge positions, okay? You got to remember, 3 guys in front of him DNF. Like, if these guys don't DNF, we don't see Kyle Larson passing 3 people here, Stenhouse Jr. falls back a few positions. That's kind of what we expect. When we look at Austin Dillon starting 10th, yes, we're going to have some guys fall in the top 5, and we're going to have some guys DNF, but I can't emphasize enough that a lot of the people who gain positions, specifically between like 6th and 14th, are mainly due to guys either DNFing, because there's 3 guys up here that DNF that get them out of the way, and then guys getting spun out, because Stenhouse gets spun out about midway through the race. I can't remember the other guy off the top of my head right now. I know some other guys. I just went blank. Several drivers. I know Stenhouse for sure. Stenhouse gets spun. He ends up driving back and still finishes 13th and stuff. But a lot of these guys, like when you get spun from 8th, you just fall to 24th, and you just actually, if you're running 8th, for example, with all the guys DNF'd in this race, you get spun. You're basically just starting like 17th again. So you're not losing as many positions as possible, but they're made more important by the fact we only have a 23 car field. I think we're going to have 26 this year. Could be wrong. I got to check that. So Austin Dillon makes through due to his pricing and the few place differential he's able to get. Christopher Bell gains a few positions, but he's not able to pay it off. We see Michael McDowell not doing anything because he's Michael McDowell. Ryan Blaney has a rough day. We see Cole Custer just able to... Wait a minute. Cole Custer... I need to fix this. Cole Custer, he gained... My bad. That should be a 4. Excuse me. Wait a minute. No, it is 7. My bad. He finished 7th. I was like, wait a minute. 14, 7. I know he's somewhere around there. Yeah, Cole Custer finishes 7th. Eric Jones, one of the bigger place differential gains just by surviving. He's not doing these green flag positions, or he's not passing these people under green flag. He is passing these people because they are getting absolutely turned up and stupid in this race. Let's kind of go through it here. Yes, he goes from 16th. And if you look back at this race, we have like a fucking huge pile up. Not a wreck in terms, but like it's just these guys pounding the heck out of each other. These guys are just destroying each other in these corners, and you see a bunch of guys like push up, and you see Jones like, hey, being smart, and goes under him and passes these guys. Okay, so like, yeah, sure, you could say that, oh, he had good green flag speed, but this is more so him just not being stupid and just taking advantage of guys being stupid in front of him. And then yet again, same situation here. Riddick and Briscoe go out, so he gains some positions there. We are back on, yeah. And then Jones basically just holds his position. Yes, he gained some positions here or there, and you can go back and watch this race, specifically when they get to like 10 laps to go, 15 laps to go. That's when people really just start shoving everybody. Like, nobody cares. And you got to remember that everybody kind of went in this race expecting these cars to not come back because, like, despite the fact that everybody was short on parts and cars, and we still kind of are, everybody just acknowledged that, hey, this car is not that important. If you guys tear it up, you tear it up. So Eric Jones is able to gain positions. We see Denny Hamlin, who goes to the garage early. My bad, the infield. He goes to the infield early. Ryan Pearce running phenomenal in this equipment. Why was Ryan Pearce so intriguing in this situation? Well, because, at least from my point of view, this is very similar, and this type of car was very similar to his Whelen Modified days with the bigger tires, especially specifically on a short track. It really, yes, we did see the aero be a huge issue at the short tracks this year, or last year, creating dirty air, but you're going so slow at the LA Coliseum that truly isn't that big of a deal, because you're basically coming to a stop in the corners anyway. Very, very similar to Ryan Pearce's modified era, which is why Ryan Pearce in the 41, I think you should play a lot of them this year. I think he has a real chance of being successful. And then you have Kevin Harvick and AJ, who get in the optimal just by de facto with their place differential points. And so, yes, why did I open this up of like, oh, well, we need to look at a lot of what-if situations, what-if scenarios. We need to understand what made these people optimal last year. I'm not saying discount that. The optimal line is Kyle Busch, Logano, Jones, Dillon, AJ Allmendinger, Kevin Harvick. And that was $44,900. So if you left $5,100 on the table, you would have done that. I also want to say that I don't fully believe that salary is anywhere near important here at the duels, Daytona, just how it is. We don't have to worry about salary for the first 3 weeks of the NASCAR season, early first 2 with the Clash and then Speed Week at Daytona. Anyway, yeah, these guys made optimal because a lot of people DNF'd and stuff. When we look at this year's race, I think it is very similar to 1, possibly 2 lap leaders. But we're, in my opinion, not going to be able to see a lot of lap leaders unless we have situations like this where they have mechanical issues or they just dump each other. We got to remember that's always a situation which will absolutely destroy the optimal line. If second place dumps first place coming to the end of the race, well, first place, or the guy who was in first place, is not going to be optimal because he's going to finish close to at least outside the top 18. And he's going to lose at least 18 points, which is basically going to nullify all the fast laps led that he gets. And so, yes, would I be concerned about that? Sure. Am I going to worry about that? No. I don't really want to build lines in situations where somebody just absolutely dumps the guy who is the clear favorite to be optimal out. So when we look at this race here, when we look at last year, what can we learn? You can't pass. No passing at all. Very difficult to pass the leader. Not only can you not pass throughout the field, and you're basically just going to ride in line and everybody try and get to the bottom. And then once you're there, you're just going to park it on the inside lane. Do people not, why is this so entertaining? This race sucks, and it's going to suck again. Like, once you get to the inside lane, you just park that mother and make it to where the guy can't push you out of the way. Okay, so can't pass the leader. Laps led are most likely going to go to whoever is starting first. Track position is going to be huge because you just can't pass people. And then the place differential that comes through is probably going to be between the guys who start in probably the back quarter. I'm not even going to say back half, probably the back quarter of the field. It's probably going to be in a situation like this where it's probably two guys. It just happened to be the guy who started 19th to 21st last year. But I could very easily see an optimal lineup to where it's the guy who starts 22nd, 19th or 18th again. Your primary lap leader, who most likely is the guy who starts first, possibly another guy who starts in the top three, and then whoever just ends up being the best point for dollar play to round out your optimal lineup and stuff. So yes, looking back at optimal lineups are certainly important. I think you should always be aware of what happens, but you need to be aware of why that lineup became optimal. And yet again, throw a what if situation out there. What if Reddick doesn't have a mechanical issue? It's pretty clear he kind of just runs away with the race. Okay, what if Kyle Busch can beat Reddick off the start of the race? He kind of runs away with the race because you really can't pass him. What if Logano doesn't win the race and he's not in a position to, only race Kyle Busch? What if he's having to race Tyler Reddick and Justin Haley again? Well, he probably doesn't win the race. Okay? So that's kind of my review. That's kind of my takeaway. That's kind of how I'm viewing the Clash this year. Let's just get through the heats, and pay attention to where drivers are starting. I understand, yes, practice is going to be huge. We need to have an idea of where these people are at. However, it really just comes down to where these guys are starting. That's just where it's at. Thank you very much for listening. Hopefully this helps you or gives you an idea of where you want to go or just a way to approach it, whatever the case may be. But thank you very much for watching. I look forward to putting out more videos leading up to the Clash, leading up to Daytona, and leading up to this season. If you want to support me, support Pearce yet again. Link above. I just went blank. The link above my head, or you can go in the description and join the Patreon there. Thank you guys very much for the support, and I will see you guys in the next video. See you guys in the next video.